Hello, my name is Veronica Martinez, and today I am going to talk about strategic performance. Strategy has been one of the oldest literatures, and it dates from the Greek times. And strategy has had the connotation of as a meaning of having a plan from moving from A to B. And Minsberg has a couple of definitions of how this can be translated. But in the next slides, what we are going to focus on is in the business strategy. And here there are two of my favorites definitions of business strategy. Minsberg in 1985 with Quinn and Goshal, they define strategy as the pattern or plan that integrates an organization's major goals. But then there is a new definition in 1997 when Jerry Johnson and Nichols say, well, hold on a second. Yeah, strategy is the direction and scope of an organization over a long term. What Jerry Johnson brings to the table, say, well, a strategy has to be dynamic and has to look at some aspects of the configuration of resources, as well as to the fulfillment of stakeholder expectations. And I think that this is what the current environment is looking for. Looking an inside and outside perspective. Minsberg has proposed different types of strategies. There is no one single definition for everything, but within the area of strategy, business strategy, there is like an evolution of the different types of strategies that an organization can have. An organization usually starts with an intended strategy, a plan to work out the goals and objectives. But then we have another types, the realized strategy, which is the realized strategy is the strategy that has been realized, achieved, and accomplished. Unfortunately, since a strategy is dependent of the internal and external environment, a strategy changes. In some organizations, the changes are quite dramatic, and in fast-moving organizations, the changes are moving continuously. So it is important to bear in mind that there are different types of strategies, even though that you have the intended and the realized strategy. But sometimes you have unrealized strategy and emergent strategy, which again, as I explained, it is dependent on the internal and external context of the organization. When we are defining a strategy, when we are creating the strategy, or when we are refreshing our strategy, it is very important to take into consideration the unit of analysis. Which type of business strategy are you refreshing, are you changing, or are you creating? In this slide, we present that, well, some big corporations, they have global strategies, very high-level strategies. They might have corporate strategies, strategic business unit strategies, even functional strategies, and some of the companies, they might have project or product strategies. Let's take the area of pharmaceuticals. Pharmaceuticals, sometimes they have a strategy by product, from the development of the new research until the research is commercialized, manufactured, produced, delivered, and then feedback again to the initial research and development. So as you can see, when you are creating a strategy, it is important to know where are you sitting. And the most important thing is to think about the alignment between different levels. How you are going to align your strategy if you are in the lower levels. This is what it makes a competitive strategy. When we talk about a business strategy, we have to talk about a strategy formulation and a strategy implementation. And these are two different things which has to communicate continuously. Unfortunately, in reality, not many times these communicate, but they have to be communicated. Organizations who are doing well in business strategy, they have to have a continuous communication between the formulation and the implementation of a strategy. But what we mean by the formulation? The formulation means the identification of opportunities, deciding what to do, identification of opportunities, identification of resources. Resources we mean by technical, financial, people skills. And then we have to take another thing into account here. What is the role of the CEO, the perspective on risk-taking, on the development of the strategy formulation. Now, the strategy implementation, it is about the execution of a strategy, achieving the results, achieving what we have in that plan. And for this reason, we have to work hard on working out the organizational structure, putting in place the right relationships to deliver what we are planning, the processes and behaviors that we want to work on, the policies and structures. As I mentioned before, this has to be communicating continuously. In this module, strategic performance, we are going to focus and emphasize on the formulation of the strategy. In the rest of this MSc course, we are going to focus in the implementation. Now, I would like to move to strategic planning. Strategic planning is the process of identifying the company's long-term goals and identifying the best approach to achieving those goals and objectives. It can be a short or a longer strategic plan. Now, I would like to introduce you the strategic value creation process, a roadmap to follow in order to plan your strategy, to develop your strategy or refresh your strategy. If you see the next slide, we start reading from left to right. First of all, we start with the analysis of the external environment. In the analysis of external environment, we have to develop some analysis of the suppliers, competitors, markets, pestle analysis, but more important, and this is where a lot of companies fail to do it, to analyze the customers, the customer expectations at this moment and what they are expecting in future, and to do an in-depth analysis of the assessment of value in use. This means the value that the customers give to the product by using it. The internal analysis is another big part of this process. And here what we are analyzing is the current state of the business. We have to analyze the capabilities, the skills, the technology, the process, the products and services that we are already providing. Once that we compare the internal and the external analysis, we came back and understand what are the gaps that our customers are seeing and we are not fulfilling. What are the gaps of the new entrants, the suppliers that they are producing and we are not supplying to the customers? The gap in the processes that we can do better. So the gap analysis reshape the next business model. But for reshaping that new business model, we have to define the value proposition. If you are a company who is refreshing the strategy, you might have to think in redefine the value proposition if the gap is too big. If the gap is small, you might want just to update your strategy. Once that you redefine your value proposition to meet your current and future needs, then you have to redefine your business model. And finally, to plan your strategic alignment between operations, management, and key stakeholders, such as customers. So, this roadmap shows that it is very important for organizations to continuously do this process to refresh what is the key value proposition that I am offering to my customers and how can I redefine my business model to better operate and create more value for me, for my customers, and for my suppliers. In this sense, we have to think strategically and we have to develop a strategic learning of the organization. In that way, we can achieve a competitive strategy and a competitive business model. The key question that many companies ask me at this station time is that, how often do you have to do this? The question is not that simple. It is very context specific. Basically, if you are in a fast-moving organization, let's say genetics, pharmaceutical, IT, you might have to revisit this once or twice a year. If you are in a more kind of machinery, in an organization that the customers, the stakeholders doesn't move that fast, and that the technology doesn't push the next level of proposition, you might want to review it once every 2 years. But the most important thing is that you review it and continue using this strategic planning and your strategy as a result. In the strategic planning, the roadmap that we just discussed in the previous slide, we are talking about the notion of value propositions. But what is a value proposition? The value proposition, the simple definition of a value proposition, is defined as an implicit promise that I, as a company, make to my customer to deliver a particular combination of values. When we are talking about value propositions and business model, we ought to be talking about strategic alignment. What we mean by strategic alignment? Once that you have defined the value proposition that you want to provide to your customers or your other key stakeholders, then you have to develop, following as a guidance, the value proposition. You have to develop the business strategy, and you have to develop the operational performance, the core competencies and capabilities and skills of your organization. Every single thing on this triangle has to be aligned to the delivery of the value proposition. If there are things which are not aligned, you might want to ask your question, why I am investing in that particular activity that it is not adding value on the delivery of my value proposition. When we talk about value propositions, we must talk about the three value propositions from Tracy and Wirasema: product leadership, operational excellence, and customer intimacy. The value matrix expands these three value propositions into 6. Having innovators, brand managers, price minimizers, simplifiers, technological integrators, and socializers. Organizations who compete and try to be innovators, they place a strong emphasis and financial investment on the development of new technologies, new design skills, and to make obsolete their own products and services. Their customers are more interested in getting the product, the newest technology, at whatever price. On the contrary, companies who compete as brand managers, they have to develop capabilities on brand positioning, clear direction of the product style, and building up their reputation and name. This is the main strength of these companies. Their customers are more interested in getting a status by the product. They don't care too much about the price. Price minimizers. Organizations who compete as price minimizers, they have to reduce the cost, to work hard on the lead times reduction, and to make their process efficient and effective. So their customers are looking for low prices, good quality, reliability. On the other hand, simplifiers. Organizations who compete as simplifiers, they have to streamline their production processes, to simplify the process from the manufacturing and design to the delivery of the product service. On the other hand, their customers are looking for and they are paying for make easy to do business with that company. Technological integrators, this is another value proposition. And organizations that work as a technological integrators, they have first to understand the customer business and then develop the capabilities to configure any specific need for the customer. So their customers, they are looking for total solutions, tailored products and services. Finally, organizations who operate as socializers, they emphasize and their main priority is the service delivery, to build up a close relationship with the customers. And their customers perhaps are not paying for the newest technology, the cheapest product or service, but they are paying and coming back to this organization for the interpersonal service and reliability. The value propositions can show us that value can be reinvented from different angles. When you see and analyze the value matrix, you can see that value can be changed by reshaping the customer relationship, extending the fulfillment to delivery, taking a new perspective of the business image or the price, bringing a new completely product design, or perhaps providing a customized solution, or moving the decision-making responsibility closer to the customer. Until now, we have been talking about mainly a strategy formulation, but now it is time to go in the intermediate between the formulation and the execution. And here I have a question for you. How well do organizations execute their strategy? You have on one hand the strategy and all the planning, the value proposition, your business model. On the other hand, you have the execution. But there is an execution gap. The Fortune in 1998 quote that less than 10% of strategies effectively formulated are effectively executed. CEOs, 70% of them, they think that it is more difficult to execute a strategy rather than to formulate a strategy. To enhance the strategy execution, we have identified that this is a real problem. And to enhance this problem or to overcome to this problem, there are two methods for doing it. One is the development of a strategy map, and the other one is the development of a success maps. These two, they have similar objectives, but they are a little bit different, and I will explain you why. In this slide, we talk about strategy maps, and you can see here a template taken from Kaplan and Norton. And basically, the strategy maps always start with the financial at the top, then they talk about the customers, the internal perspective, and the learning and growth. On the other hand, the success maps have a similar kind of objective as the strategy maps, but the success maps start with the point of asking who are our key stakeholders and what they want and what they need. Based on that, we start building up the success map. And then later on, if you want to fragment the financial, customer perspective, internal perspective, and learning perspective, you can do it in order to make it similar to the balance scorecard that your organization might be using. Success maps are particularly well received in public sectors of organizations, especially because public sectors organizations, the final aim of this organization is not to have a great financial output, but some other different sort of outputs to help different stakeholders rather than just the company as the key one. If you are interested in reading more about and learning more about strategy, value propositions, value creations, product service systems, strategy planning, success maps, and strategy maps, you can download free journal papers, conference papers, and reports in the following website. This is the end of our masterclass in strategic performance. It has been a real pleasure to stay with you today. If you need further information about our MSc, please contact Ellie, or either you can see our website